Aloha, and we are back with the video notes to go along with Jason's Ukulele Book, which looks like this. If you'd like, you can pick it up from our website. I feel like Wilson looking over the top of the... Anyway, sorry. Silly jokes. Okay, Jason's Ukulele Book, we're picking it up. Page 18, strum diagrams. In the previous video, we talked about strums 11 and 10, and we also brought up some things about, like I use Amazing Grace as an example. Amazing Grace is a song that's in 3/4 timing, so it's a little different from a lot of these strum diagrams. We sort of optimized for 4/4 timing. So before we go on to the Hawaiian strums, I thought I'd touch quickly on what to do if you are in one of those scenarios where you have a 3/4 strum. Which I don't have diagrammed in the book, but we'll put in the video here. So in general, you could go down, 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 like 1, 2, 3. That'd be an easy enough thing to do, but you could also do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. So that would be down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down. Another thing that's nice to do in 3/4 songs is to arpeggiate, which we talked about briefly in the other one. Also, if you look on page 99 in the book, there's some arpeggiation patterns. So you could go, for example, this is really more of a 6/8 kind of a pattern. We'll talk about this more when we get out to that part of the book, but I just wanted to touch on it now because it came up in the previous video. And I realized when I was proofing it a couple things. First of all, I noticed that there's one little hair that comes out of here. Anyway, that's gone now. The things we teach. Okay, so moving on. Hawaiian Vamp. Strum 12 on page 19. This is a really useful pattern to know when we're teaching, especially in Hawaii, because in Hawaii a lot of songs start off with this kind of a pattern. Necessarily know how many times you're going to do that, because in a hula, if you're working with professional hula dancers, it's going to be twice at the beginning of the song, really easy. If you're working with keiki or children's hula, you have no idea how many times you're going to do that vamp, because what if they're not lined up correctly and something needs to be adjusted, and you just keep playing the vamp until it's time for the song to start. That's what a vamp is in general. So a hula vamp or a Hawaiian vamp is specific to what you see in the beginning of a hula song. So we're going to use a technique here to make it a little more interesting. But before we do, let's talk about the general timing pattern. In general, this is going to go, I'm playing in the key of G now just for simplicity's sake. I'm going to use an A7 for 2 strums, 1, 2. Then I'm going to use a D7 for 2 strums, 1, 2. Then I'm going to use a G6 for 4 strums, 1, 2. 3, 4. So if we play that all sort of smoothly, it's going to sound like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's okay. That's pretty darn good. It'd be a little better if we did this. Hear that little flutter? Speed it up a little bit. So every time when I unfret, so if I slow it back down, it's going to be a flutter and then an A7. Then while I change chords, there's another little flutter, then a D7. When I change chords again, another little flutter, and a G6. So, flutter A, flutter D, flutter G, 2, 3, 4, flutter A. Now I'll do it without the flutter. It's nice. It's not all it could be. Here's with the flutter again. Little difference is everything. might notice during the G6 we're doing a little different rhythm there. We have some choices there. Mostly what I'm doing is a pattern that's very similar to strum 4. Down, down, up, up, down. But we can't just do that for the whole hula vamp because the timing pattern would be weird. We need a chord change to happen at a specific time because in a hula vamp you're lining everything up for the hula dancers. That traditionally at the beginning of a song you'd play a vamp once and there's no dancing. The hula dancers, this is where everybody knows where the starting point is. And now here's the start, and now is where they start dancing. And then the verse starts here. There's a structure to it, so you can't really vary that because the last thing you'd want to do is confuse hula dancers. That's just not... You probably wouldn't confuse them. They'd probably still nail their dance, but you wouldn't look very good. You want everybody to look good. So if you can nail this, flutter down, up, down, flutter down, up, down, flutter down, down, up, down, flutter down, up, down, flutter down, up, down, flutter down, down, up, down. Your hula vamps will just sound surprisingly more Hawaiian-y, if that's a word. What you don't want to do is go like the angry kindergartner, for example. So you want this to be smooth and sophisticated as much as you can. So there's an example of strum 12. Strum 13, I called it a slow hula because it's a lot. It's sort of some of the patterns with hulas are very slow, and the idea is you don't want to take away from the dance. You want everybody to be watching the dancer. The dancer, after all, the person doing the hula is the centerpiece, and you are merely the accompaniment to that. When there's a hula going on, you don't take a solo, you don't invite people to take solos, you don't do anything fancy. That's the last thing you want to do. The hula is the centerpiece, and you are accompanying the hula, rather than the other way around. A lot of times people would think of it as like the hula dancer is dancing along to what you're playing, but that's really backwards. The hula is the centerpiece. So if we're in a slower hula, we might do something like this. Because the strum's interesting. There's something different about it. It's pluck, flutter down, and pluck, flutter down, and pluck, flutter down. It's hard to say that and enunciate it. It's easier to strum it. So we call it 1 and a 2, a 3 and a 4, a 1 and a 2. So the idea is the whole time your hand is rotating smoothly like this. That really is the trick to this. And you're just using different techniques to make it more interesting. Because if you don't do those techniques, you just get this, which is strum 3, which is okay. But if you want to do something just a little more interesting without taking away from the hula, strum 13 is a nice strum to know. Think of a hula that's a little bit of a slower hula, like Puamana would be a good example here maybe. Puamana, ku'uhome Lahaina. So that kind of a thing. We've got a nice smooth flow, but it's a little more interesting than just going la 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 la, which is fine if you don't know strum 13, but if you do know strum 13, it's pretty cool to be able to do that. It makes it a little bit more interesting. And then we have a fast hula. There are a couple ways to do a fast hula. You don't normally see this kind of a strum outside of Hawaiian music, but you do see it a lot in Hawaiian music. So there are two ways to do it. The first section of strum 14 looks like this. But it's going to need to be faster than that. It's going to be like this. So it's 1 and 2 and a 3. So 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4 and a 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4 and a. You can strum it faster than you can enunciate it. This is one of those exception strums because generally every other strum we've been doing, we've wanted our wrist to be rotating smoothly. No weird variations in timing, no jerky motions, just smooth. Because that's how we keep our song smooth. This one is going to go da 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 da. So there's like a double time kind of a feel in it. And if you can do that smoothly, you get. So the trick on those really fast down up, the double times, you don't actually even need to hit all the strings. You're really just putting in a little bit of a rhythmic element there. If you try to hit all the strings and if you bunch up your hand and you don't let it stay relaxed, you're going to get something that sounds like, again, the angry kindergartner, the temper tantrum. That's what we don't want. It would sound like this. Catastrophe. Or sometimes you get people that do this with a pick, and if you play it with a guitar pick, I think it sounds a lot like the temper tantrum anyway. So learning how to do it, so the fan, use a fan, and then up, and then those little quick ones, I might just use one finger. Da, 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 da. So you get an interesting and rhythmic and consistent pattern. That's the first way to do it. The second way to do it is to use triple up strum, which is this. So that's thumbnail, index, middle, and then flick your middle finger down. So you get four strikes in a fraction of a second. So that would sound like. That's a little trickier. We'll slow it down and we'll change our angle here. Index, middle, down, up, down, thumb, index, middle. The advantage of the second way, although you need to learn that technique, the triple up strum, the advantage of the second way is your wrist stays smooth. You don't have that tendency to go and make it more heavy-handed than you want it. So when you get that triple up strum, it's a really nice technique. The thing is that this strum is really kind of specific to some hula songs that are in that style. I haven't really seen this outside of some fast hula songs. You could use it in all sorts of songs, I'm sure, but that's mostly where you see it. So if you're playing for hula, this is a good type of a strum to know. And otherwise you might not need it as much. All right, let's cut this one here and we'll make another video. Mahalo.